Hello folks, welcome to the channel Jose. Today we're going to give you an idea how you can replace the exhaust flange gasket on a 91 to 99 Toyota Tercel or even the Paseo. These gaskets are right where the headers become 4 into 1 tube. This is just an example. This is not a Tercel exhaust system. And then there's an attachment pipe that goes right here that is bolted on, and there's a gasket that seals that between both of them, and that's the gasket that we're going to show you how to replace it in case it's bad or you're hearing noises or you're having a leak from the exhaust on that area. So these gaskets, once you crush them once and you put them on and you remove them, they're almost not reusable, so you gotta put a brand new one. So today we're going to show you how to replace that gasket so you can do it yourself at home and you don't have to spend money on taking it to a shop for a simple replacement. And with that said, let's get started. Okay folks, so what we have done is we have put our car in jack stands, and what we are going to be doing is that way we can have clearance to get underneath the car and work underneath the exhaust. But before we get in there, we have to remove this heat shield by removing 1, 2, 3 10mm bolts. One is gone. We're going to be removing 2 for our system because we have to expose that area right there where the 2 bolts you get the bottom piece, the downpipe, into the headers or the exhaust manifold. So that's where the leak is. So before we get down there, we take the heat shield off, and then we go down there to show you what we need to do to lower the pipe down so we can get the exhaust flange gasket in there, because these crush and they're one-time use. So now that we have removed the heat shield, we're gonna have to remove a nut that is facing, is right underneath right here, and then we're gonna have to remove that one right there, this one, so we can split the exhaust system right there. But we have to remove that bolt right down there. There's 2 bolts, but our car has one that keeps the downpipe into the block, so that way it doesn't move around. So you can remove these, or go remove the bottom ones and then remove this. So now we're gonna take this nut off, and it's a 12mm, and on your car might be different because sometimes if it's worked on, they might put a bigger bolt or bigger nut. So on the other one as well, we're gonna go on the other side, but we start with this and then we go below. So now what we do is we remove these 2 12mm bolts that hold that downpipe into the block. So we remove it so we can drop the downpipe and we can replace the exhaust flange gasket that is up there. So now that we have taken those 2 bolts off, in our case it was just one, and then the 2 nuts that hold the flange together, we can drop the exhaust now so we can replace the exhaust flange gasket. So once you split the flange from the headers or the exhaust manifold, right in there there's a gasket like this that is old and brittle and compressed. So now we take that one out, we put this in, and we start putting everything back together. And there's the gasket right in there. You can barely even see if it's a gasket now. It should be like this, but now we take that out and put this one in. So here's a new gasket. Here's the old one. So this wasn't doing any good, so we're gonna replace it with a new one and get rid of this old brittle one that wasn't sealing right, and we could hear a leak right on the front. So we put the new one in. Now we want to expose that there's a low point right on this. There's a groove where the gasket falls in. Once we lift the flange from the bottom piece into it with that new gasket, where the gasket guides itself and sits in. So that's looking from underneath upwards. So now we put everything back together and we start putting all the screws and everything as it was. So now what we do is we put the exhaust right into the block, just present it with a bolt, so that way it's not hanging, and we guide it up there as well. And then we'll put the bolts in the exhaust flange. So now what we do is we put the driver's side nut from underneath, and then we just present it, snug it, and then we start putting the other side so they don't tighten and crush the gasket from one side. So now we do the driver's side and we tighten it. So now that we have put the flange back together with a new gasket, now we can put the heat shield back on with a 10mm bolts, and then we can go down there and tighten that 12mm bolts that hold the downpipe to the block. So now that we have put everything back together up there with the heat shield and everything, now we can tighten completely this bracket that goes to the downpipe, so it keeps the downpipe solid and it doesn't rattle around underneath the car. So those are 12mm. And well, folks, hopefully this video is useful and helpful, and for replacing the exhaust flange gasket on a 91 to 94 Toyota Tercel. And most Toyotas, they have this flange, and most cars have this gaskets, so it's very important to replace them. And for folks who are watching our video, haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe. If you like our video, give us thumbs up, share it, and we'll see you soon with more videos here en el canal El Chano José.